So before we begin, Doctor, can you summarize briefly what your opinions are in this case?
Yes. So in my opinion, Mr. Floyd had a sudden cardiac arrhythmia due to his atherosclerotic and hypertensive heart disease, or you can write that down multiple different ways, during his restraint and subdual by the police, or restraint by the police. And then his significant contributory conditions would be, since I've already put the heart disease in part 1, he would have the toxicology, the fentanyl and methamphetamine. There is exposure to a vehicle exhaust, so potentially carbon monoxide poisoning, or at least an effect from increased carbon monoxide in his bloodstream, and paraganglionoma, or the other natural disease process that he has. So all of those combined to cause Mr. Floyd's death.
All right. So let's walk through each of these, if we could, starting with the opinions of Dr. Baker as far as the cardiopulmonary arrest. Before we do that, if we could publish the exhibit, Your Honor. Can you just describe what this is and why it's relevant to this case?
So this is a document that is produced as a guide for medical examiners to use when certifying the death, and specifically the manner of death.
What is the manner of death?
So the manner of death is, how did the cause of death come about? And you have 5 different choices that you can check off or write down on a death certificate as to the manner of death.
Now, does this document specifically address asphyxial deaths, positional asphyxia deaths?
It addresses all sorts of manner of death, and again, it's a guideline put out there to assist medical examiners. And unfortunately, not every case cleanly fits into one particular category or meets the criteria for the guidelines.
Okay. So let's talk about, in terms of this second slide, positional restraint. How does NAME deal with the autopsies and death investigations involving potential positional restraint?
So the recommendation is that, or it's not a recommendation, they say you may be classified as a homicide.
Okay.
It doesn't say shall or should. It says may be classified as a homicide. Again, we have to recognize that these are medical guidelines. And it then goes on, and everybody, I think, can actually easily read that.
Okay.
If you want to go back one, and in such cases there may not be intent to kill, but the death death results from one or more intentional, volitional, potentially harmful acts directed at the decedent, without consent, of course. Further, there is some value to the homicide classification towards reducing the public perception that a cover-up is being perpetrated by the death investigation agency.